This is absolutely wild. After an entire morning filled with discussion about Giannis Antetokounmpo and potential trade scenarios, now Mitchell Robinson's name is appearing in trade reports. And here's the critical thing to understand. This isn't because the Knicks organization doesn't value him or want to move on from him. This is entirely about the second apron salary cap restrictions, which could force New York into making a trade they genuinely don't want to make. Let me break down everything we're hearing about this developing situation, because it reveals the harsh financial realities that even well-managed franchises have to navigate. The trade rumors and speculation just won't stop coming. This entire morning has been dominated by reports about Giannis potentially coming to the Knicks. But if you were paying close attention to all the reporting, you noticed something else buried in there. There was another significant story among all the Giannis coverage, and that's the possibility of the Knicks being forced by salary cap mathematics to trade Mitchell Robinson, even though they'd prefer to keep him long-term. While Mitchell Robinson has established himself as a foundational piece for this team, he's been surrounded by trade speculation for the past several seasons. The difference now is that the financial pressure might actually force the organization's hand. League insiders are indicating that Mitchell Robinson is a name to watch on the potential trade market this season. And here's the specific context that makes this situation so complicated. Robinson has been extension eligible since July, and as of right now, he hasn't signed a new contract with the team. That means he's set to become an unrestricted free agent next summer when his current deal expired. If the Knicks keep their current roster completely intact and then resign Mitchell Robinson to a new contract, New York projects to be a second apron team next season based on their salary commitments. Robinson's current salary of approximately $12.95 million for the 2025-2026 season may not be sufficient on its own to bring them below the second apron threshold. But using his contract as part of some sort of package deal appears to be one of the more realistic moves the front office could make to maintain financial flexibility. According to cap experts who've analyzed the situation, this is something the Knicks organization absolutely must consider as they plan for both the immediate future and long-term sustainability. And this is exactly where we find ourselves right now. This is why the Knicks might be forced to move on from Mitchell Robinson despite genuinely wanting to keep him. I want to be crystal clear about this. If it was entirely up to the basketball operations people making decisions based purely on performance and fit, they would probably want to keep Robinson on this team for his entire career. The problem is the absolutely brutal reality of the second apron restrictions. No team wants to be trapped in the second apron because of how limiting it is for roster construction and future flexibility. And if New York resigns Mitchell Robinson while keeping every other player they currently have under contract, they're going to be pushed into that second apron territory. And honestly, I don't see Mitchell Robinson being willing to take significantly less money than he could command on the open market, especially if he has a strong season this year. By all accounts, and based on what we've seen in preseason, he's likely going to have an excellent season because he's locked in as a starter and will be playing significant minutes as the defensive anchor. If Robinson performs at the level everyone expects, protecting the rim, dominating the boards, finishing lobs, he's going to want and deserve a substantial payday when he hits unrestricted free agency. And the New York Knicks, unfortunately, may not be the team that can offer him that kind of money while staying under the second apron. That means he might explore his options in unrestricted free agency and ultimately sign with another organization that has more cap flexibility. And New York absolutely does not want to see Mitchell Robinson walk away for nothing in return. Can you imagine that scenario? Having one of the best defensive centers in the entire league when healthy, and then you let him leave as an unrestricted free agent because you chose not to extend him or couldn't match competing offers? At that point, the Knicks would find themselves in an incredibly difficult situation with limited options. The fundamental question becomes, do you trade Mitchell Robinson now while you can get assets back? Do you resign him and accept being a second apron team with all the restrictions that come with it? Or do you let him walk in free agency and get nothing? What's the right decision for the organization based on how this front office has operated historically? If they determine they cannot resign Mitchell Robinson to a contract that works within their financial framework, they're likely going to trade him rather than lose him for nothing. Now, I'm not suggesting that Mitchell Robinson would be the only player potentially involved in trade discussions. Maybe they're going to explore moving other contracts as well to create the necessary cap space. And maybe all of this connects somehow to the Giannis Antetokounmpo situation that's been dominating headlines. After the bombshell reporting we heard today about the Knicks' genuine interest in Giannis and his reciprocal interest in New York, I'm not putting anything past this front office in terms of their ambition and willingness to make bold moves. The timing of everything, the way the Knicks have been maneuvering, all the moves they've made throughout this offseason, it all starts to make more sense if you view it through the lens of Giannis potentially being the ultimate endgame. But either way, getting back to Mitchell Robinson specifically, he is such a dominant force for New York when he's healthy and engaged. The reason he's locked in as the starting center is because he's the defensive anchor this team desperately needs. The Knicks need his rim protection, they need his rebounding, they need his vertical spacing on offense. Once again, just to emphasize this point clearly, the Knicks organization does not want to give away Mitchell Robinson, and they certainly don't want to trade him if they have other options. However, they also don't want to be trapped as a second apron team with all the restrictions that entails for future roster building. So difficult decisions have to be made about which players are going to be kept as part of this core roster, and which players, unfortunately, might have to be moved to maintain financial flexibility. Mitchell Robinson, at least according to credible league insiders who understand the cap mathematics, is a legitimate name to watch for potential trade scenarios. New York may ultimately be forced into making this move purely because of second apron concerns, rather than any basketball-related reason. And the challenging question becomes, what kind of return package would they even target in a Robinson trade? They could potentially trade him for draft compensation, and then, at the end of the season, look for another player in free agency, or through trade, who could replace his production at the center position. This appears to be the potential path forward for the Knicks regarding Mitchell Robinson, not because they want to take this approach, but because they're being forced into it by the harsh realities of the NBA's second apron restriction. Looking at the broader competitive landscape, the Eastern Conference race is going to be incredibly tight this season. Cleveland is getting respect as a top contender. New York is right there in the conversation as a legitimate threat. Orlando has taken a step forward. Atlanta is getting some dark horse attention. Detroit is improving. And Boston remains in the mix despite injury concerns affecting their timeline. The reason these competitive projections look the way they do is in large part due to Mitchell Robinson and his expected impact. Everybody around the league understands that Robinson is likely going to be the starting center for this Knicks team, and that means New York's defense is going to be substantially better than it was last season, especially with their starting unit intact. This also means Karl-Anthony Towns isn't going to get exploited as much on the defensive end, especially with how the coaching staff is utilizing their rotation. They're playing Towns for stretches at the center position, then switching him back to the 4 while bringing in another big to play the 5, whether that's Mitchell Robinson or one of the backup centers. Either way, New York appears to have a strategic plan for managing that center position, and it's exciting to see how it's developing. That's why during the preseason games, one of the main things worth watching was how the lineups looked, how the rotations functioned, how many different lineup combinations were tested, and how many players got meaningful minutes. The encouraging sign was that every single active and available player got real playing time and opportunities to show what they could contribute. That's exactly the kind of inclusive approach that builds team chemistry and depth. The coaching philosophy seems sound, the rotations make sense, and Robinson is being utilized in ways that maximize his strengths while minimizing his weaknesses. But even though Robinson is being used correctly and effectively right now with this team, we still have to acknowledge the reality of the situation. He was supposed to get extended already, and that extension hasn't happened. And now we're looking at the very real possibility of Robinson exploring unrestricted free agency next summer if a deal doesn't get done. For my part, I really don't want to see that scenario play out because losing a player of his caliber for nothing would be a significant setback. So two potential paths await the Knicks moving forward here. They're either going to be forced to trade Mitchell Robinson to avoid losing him for nothing, or they're going to extend him and accept whatever salary cap consequences come with that decision. But if they do extend him, the critical question becomes, how much money are they willing to commit? Because remember, even though they want to keep this team together and maintain continuity, they want to accomplish that without becoming a second apron team, if at all possible. A lot of significant decisions are going to come to the forefront as this season progresses, and especially as we get closer to the trade deadline and free agency period. The front office is going to have to make some tough choices that balance competitive aspirations with long-term financial sustainability. But as of right now, according to credible league insiders who track these situations, a player to watch closely on the potential trade market is Mitchell Robinson, even though it's driven by salary cap mathematics rather than any dissatisfaction with his performance or fit. What do you think about all of this? Do you believe the Knicks should extend Robinson regardless of the second apron implications? Or do you think they should trade him now while they can get value back? How much would you be willing to pay him if you were making the decision? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any updates as this situation continues developing throughout the season.